Welcome back to the Everything Property podcast. Now, one of the more lucrative investing strategies is property development. It's a high stress environment with high risk, but also high reward. Today's guest has managed over $3 billion in development deals, and here to tell us all about his experience is Joe Abboud from Trifalgar. Joe, welcome to the Everything Property podcast.
Hey, mate. Hey, thanks for having me.
That's all right. All good. Look, you come well regarded from a mutual colleague of both of ours, but tell me a little bit about young Joe Abboud back in the day as architectural draftsman growing up in Granville.
Mate, I'm a GB by nature, GB by blood, which is a Granville boy. That's an abbreviation. Mate, Granville, to be honest, made me the person I am today. Below a middle-class suburb back in the day, we aspired to change, I guess, our lives for the better. And Granville taught me a lot, man. I'm a kid from the streets. I came to the industry relatively uneducated. I couldn't afford to go to university. I started off as a draftsman. I worked my way up through the ranks, built businesses in the architectural world. So I had an architectural practice most of my life, which I still do have. And, mate, probably designed, 5,000 to 10,000 dwellings over that time frame. And then I realised that I was pretty good at solutioning and, coming up with ways to resolve problem sites. And I built a business out of it.
What I'm always fascinated to hear about these stories, though, is, and like even from the biggest developers and the guys, Meritons and all that sort of stuff, is the first project. Tell me about that for you. Your first development project, not sort of architectural, but development project.
Yeah, it was an option agreement, 7 to 9 Amos Street, Westmead. It was a small site relatively small, for about 9 townhouses. It was, an option that I took. So I started optioning property because I didn't have money to buy it. And so, optioning was the only way that I could find to, use my first $5,000 that I made from designing a industrial building for somebody. I made $5,000 bonus for that. You're talking 30 years ago. $5,000 is a lot of money. I used that $5,000 to option this site with another guy.
Tell me about options. So we've had a property conveyancer on. We've run through for the audience put and call options in theory, but in case they haven't listened to that episode, what do you mean by optioning up a site?
So options, and I generally did call options, but put and call options could work also. A call option is basically a structured arrangement or an agreement to purchase. It's non-binding in a call option structure, where you pay, my general rule was around about 1% of the purchase price for an agreed period of time for you to be able to go out and solution either getting an approval or, in essence, fix or add the value that you're trying to. What is your value proposition? What's your value add to the site in order to at some point either go on to develop that and do full delivery or sell it at a profit? I used to pay about a 1% fee on average. I used to get 12 to 24 months. And they were always real estate assets that had issues.
What about that first site that you were talking about? What was the appeal or what was the issue on that one?
Everybody thought you could only put 6 on there. I sort of put pen to paper. I used to do a little bit of due diligence myself internally. Used to sketch up some schemes that I found, very efficient ways to design layouts that would be so efficient that you'd yield extra. It came down from, penny pinching, to the 10 and 20 millimeters, right, within a living area, to add that to a bedroom to be able to make it habitable or livable. Efficiency of the use of space through efficiency, where you placed your stairs, walking directly into a living room was very efficient, and you probably see that done a fair bit these days. Other architects used to go and design hallways and, things that were not efficient, so that, my 80 or 90 square metre apartment would be as efficient as 120 square metres in usable space, right? Furniture placement, the use of, dual use of bathrooms and laundries on ground floors. So you had a laundry and you had a WC that was interconnected. You didn't have to provide separate space. Plumbing was very efficient, so that plumbing sat on top of plumbing. Bathrooms upstairs sat on top of wet areas downstairs. False ceilings and stacks would be hidden because you're in the kitchen area. Above that, in and amongst that false ceiling, you could put your air conditioning in there too. So, there's an air of efficiency that comes. There's a science to come with good design and, I guess, development as such. And, if you're able to extract every square millimetre out of into the floor space ratios, then you could end up with some extra apartments.
So how did you first go about identifying, or I guess finding the site? Like, did you just go over and have a budget, or just try to find, like, did it work for a client somewhere else and you said this is a good area?
Look, it's a game of numbers. I think the first thing is you generally are able to do options in a buyer's market, not in a seller's market, right? So at the moment, I think we're in a buyer's market, right? So, people are going to be a lot more amenable to structured deals.
Yep.
So timing is critical. And I think if you actually look at a bell curve, if you're buying in the gloom, right, which is the buyer's market, and then you solution it all the way up that bell curve, at some point, buying today is a really good time to buy. For example, terms, conditions, price, the issues with the whole construction industry, no one's building at the moment, et cetera, et cetera. It makes for the perfect storm for us as somebody that bought counter-cyclical. And I still buy counter-cyclical. When everyone's buying, I'm selling, and when everyone's selling, I'm buying. So for me, timing, there's a science to optioning, and it doesn't happen all the time. It only happens when people, and I'll use this term loosely, are desperate, or a little more desperate, or are more amenable to some longer or some structured deals that are a little bit longer in nature.
Yeah.
Right. Because if everyone's ready to buy and it's an easy site and it's too competitive in that market, I don't compete. I don't buy at auctions. I generally don't tender on expressions of interest. That's not where you can't compete in that space, because especially as soon as you start to scale up and you're doing some larger sites, no one wants to give you an option, right? Because there's a lot of, at the moment, it's the bigger players that are only going to execute. So those bigger players are cashed up, they're backed by private equity, hedge funds, there's all sorts of structures that are out there at the moment, right?
But that first deal, right, 7, everyone thought you could get, 6 on it? You got 9 on it?
Yeah.
How did you go about optioning? Price you paid? You said you went in it with someone else?
I had to probably pay a little bit more, so everybody was pricing it at 6. So if I priced it at 7, I still had 2 units that I could profit, right? So everybody was paying 6 times whatever that was worth per site. Call it 100 a site. Call that 600 grand. I offered them 700 grand. Nobody else is willing to pay 700 grand. But my 700 grand was conditional upon these terms and conditions, i.e. a call option, i.e. a period of time. It also had another problem. It required a easement to drain water at the rear because the site fell to the rear. So I guess that little complexity would scare most people off. Because why would I go and pay, full freight for something, and then there's no guarantee I'm going to be able to get an easement to drain water. But then again, I had another little trick up my sleeve called 88K, the Conveyancing Act. So 88K, the Conveyancing Act, is a legal mechanism that allows you to, in essence, force the neighbour to give you an easement, as long as you're not affecting them. So, for example, if I need to demolish half the house to run my easement or my pipe through, that's never going to work, right? Yeah. But, if I would go and assess that site and I know that there's 1 to 3 metres of, setback next to the building run down that side boundary, I'm not really affecting anybody. And then the guy's going to probably get he'll definitely get some money for that.
Yeah.
So he'll get, back in the day it was probably sort of 30 to 50K just to let me run a pipe down there. Right. So, it's money for jam the way I see it. People also don't appreciate the fact that they're going to make money doing that. Yeah, there's a burden on the property, but look, normally my lawyer would send them a letter. It would say, we would love to run an easement through there. But by the way, we don't really want to use 88K of the Conveyancing Act, so why don't you take X amount of dollars?
Okay, so you offer a bit of cash up front.
Yeah, carrot and stick approach, you know. Give them some money, you know, wet their beaks a bit. It's money for jam. They're not really doing nothing for it. You know, generally if there's a dispute, you go to court. Value of general plays a part. That keeps the price reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they're the little things that, you know, I guess help put that together. So the easement was an issue. I gave them an extra 100K that they weren't expecting.
Yeah.
That bought me some time. And, you know, we sell it by sort of telling them, if I gave you extra money, it's like earning interest or more. It's better than interest in the bank. How much are you going to get?
Yeah.
So you kind of got to you got to build a plausible reason for them to come with you for the ride. Then the other thing is credibility. You know, they've got to make sure that you're going to deliver what you promise you're going to deliver, right?
How'd you do that if it was your first deal?
I entered into an agreement that had certain milestones and KPIs I had to agree to. So I agreed to submit plans within a certain time frame.
Mm-hmm.
I told them I was going to go to court. I'd lodge a Class 1 appeal within 41 days. So, you know, I took a very, I committed to certain terms and conditions that gave them comfort. So, you know, you got to create a meeting of the minds.
Yeah.
That's the other part of it. There's a psychology in this too. It's not just about the money. They need to like you. They need to trust you. You know, all those things have got to play in, right? That's the perfect storm, right? It's multifaceted in its approach. It's not just, you know, get an agent and let him convince somebody, you know.
How do you do that? Or maybe you've obviously gotten better over it over the years, but like, you got a team now that does that, or are you still knocking on people's doors? Because a lot of people would just tell you to get lost, like piss off, you know, another developer. How do you build trust from that first moment?
Look, I think the way we do it these days is, to be honest, I haven't been very, very active. That's the truth. I've got enough projects at the moment, and I'm just trying to sort of finish them as we go. The time frame it's taken to do things has been, you know, we spoke earlier, you know, state government hurdles, local government hurdles are just becoming, you know, ridiculously slow. And impossible in some instances. You know, things that used to take me, I used to be able to do, I've done, my biggest rezoning took me 3 years, and it was probably the biggest project in the hills. These days, 7 years is around about the average, 6 to 7 years, man. It's crazy. So, you know, these days it's finding unicorns, I guess, right? Finding sites that have got real issues. For example, we did one, we owned a site in Rouse Hill.
Mm-hmm.
That had about 6.5 hectares and 6.5 hectares of industrial land full of ecological issues. You know, it looks like the Belangolo State Forest if you Google it.
6.5 hectares in Rouse Hill. Jesus. Yep.
So, you know, again, the science behind that was that we needed to find a plausible use for that. We've now got a DA for a 75,000 square metre data centre. Mm-hmm. We've got 100 megawatts of power reserved for the site. We've been able to solution that with a hybrid solution of both biobanking and some offset strategies, you know, and we've been able to, you know, get an approval to clear about 4 hectares, 3.5 hectares, 4 hectares.
Of trees?
Yeah, man.
And you offset that then?
So it's a hybrid of biobanking, so biobanking credits.
Mm-hmm. Well, explain those, but normal people aren't going to know what they are.
Oh, you got to put a bit of money into a biobank that, you know, goes towards biodiversity schemes in other areas. You know, it's almost like picking another site. You know, an offset strategy at another site we used was for every tree we removed, we agreed to plant 7 trees.
Wow.
Right. So, you know, that's kind of the way. It's one of the strategies we've used, you know, along the line. And flooding issues are a common thing. You know, so all of these things are problems that most people are not bothered with. Especially a developer or a builder who's you know, not necessarily accustomed to dealing with it the way we do. And like I said, man, we did that for 15 years for other people and then realised we ought to just do this for ourselves. You know, it wasn't enough money doing it for other people and nobody appreciates it anyway. So.
How much did you make on that first deal? Do you remember?
Oh, Amos Street?
Yeah.
It's about
you get the DA approved
yeah,
it was
my share, 50% of it was 120 grand.
Mm-hmm.
It was 25 years ago.
Wow.
You know, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I think I went overseas and spent it in 4 months in Lebanon and travelled right through Europe doing that. I never forget it. I came back with not much money. But it was fun, you know, and I think the sense of freedom is a rare commodity as well.
You had proof of concept at least.
Yeah, look, I left and I had a couple of deals, on the go. Right, there was a few in the pressure cooker.
Yep.
Always we're about 2 or 3 or 4 deals deep. So.
Tell me, you don't like building too much.
No,
Why?
it's not worth my time, energy, and sanity.
Okay. But the planning, the planning side of deals is, because it's almost coming as big of a headache.
Well, look, I'm going to deal with a half a dozen consultants, and then there's potentially some rationale behind the solution. In the tradesman's world, unfortunately, and I blame this on the education system, they're never taught to run businesses, right? The tradesman is taught to be a tradesman. He's taught to, if he's a carpenter, he's taught to cut wood. If he's a plumber, he's taught to lay pipe, whatever. But at no point does the system teach them how to be business operators. So the problem you're going to have is you're going to have some, especially these days, tradies are harder and harder to find. They do 1 or 2 years, they decide they're going to run their own business. They go and start a business and have no business acumen or experience. And then as a builder, I've got to deal with somebody that doesn't understand a contract, he doesn't understand administration. Invoicing and structured ways to do that is a problem all the time because he doesn't know how to cash flow his business. He probably doesn't have enough money to do that. And then he wants to get paid before he does his work. He'll do his work, he doesn't do it correctly, he doesn't want to pay for that. And then it's just a snowball effect after that, and before you know it, it becomes a nothing short of gangland on your site. You know what I mean? It's not a good place to be for mine. I don't care how small or big you are, you're going to be faced with those issues. Some people deal with them. Everyone deals with it differently, clearly. The carrot and stick approach to the big developer is always the way they deal with it, and they'll just keep pushing them off to the next project, and I'll give you another job, and hold retention on them and don't pay them for that, and make it up on the next job, and. But if you're only one job deep, you've got no incentive. So, if you're one of those bigger guys and you've got a pipeline of 50 projects for the next 50 years, you can instill hope in that tradesman, and you can drag him along for as long as you need to, man, because there's a value proposition for him, right? He's thinking he's going to get the next job. But if I'm one job deep, why does he need to be loyal to me? Why does he need to negotiate with me? What have I got to offer him further for him to take a hit if I need him to take a hit? Or if he hasn't done the right thing, he doesn't care. He's never going to do another job for me. He's going to go for broke on me, and he's going to try and get what he can. So it's dog eat dog for me, that industry. I one day decided to think about getting into construction and full delivery. So I booked out a hotel conference room and a couple of massive whiteboards, and I actually drew the flowchart of the process end to end for development, including the construction. The development piece, came like sort of end to end, and I could see what that is. That was something I did all the time. And then I did one for construction. And then the minefield of a flowchart that I seen in front of me, and then little offshoots of, I put little markers of danger spots, right? Just bits that are, very sensitive, let's call it.
Yep.
The amount of sensitivity on that flowchart was ludicrous, and it's nothing compared to what the Building Commission has now done. So back then it was a problem. Today it's a minefield, and they've successfully gotten rid of, the smaller guy. It's always been the intent, I believe. And there's some other big picture agendas that are there. So, man, short story for me is, man, I would spend years and years trying to solution something, because look, let me tell you this: if I bought a site today and it took me 10 years to get a solution, at least the value of my property is increasing at least 3 to 8%. Include some booms, call it average 5, 6. 6 is a 36% compounding, right? So some of our projects that have taken 6 years, they've been a headache, but I probably got 3-4x, on the purchase price. So that's the I guess the silver lining around that cloud, for us as running the development process. But construction is just fraught with danger, man. It's just got too many pitfalls. And then the problem with full delivery is not just the construction. Now you've got local councils to give you final approvals and occupation certificates and sort out your 88B instruments and register your titles and in the minefield of stakeholders that you need to deal with in the process. I was in a meeting the other day. We've got a project going for a subdivision out in the southwest, and I'm more concerned about the last 3 months of the project than I am about the whole project. And they said, why? I said, because that last 3 months of the project, where I got to go to local authorities, state government authorities, in order to get my final approvals, I have no control over that. The minute it leaves my hand, you can't even talk to it anymore. Apparently, you've got to upload stuff to portals, right? So there's no human interaction anymore. We go back to that lack of accountability that's there. I'm hoping the systems and processes they're building have a good long-term effect. But look, I don't hold that process in high regard, man, because it's fraught with danger. And what the Commissioner just done with everybody, rightly or wrongly, I have no opinion about that because I'm not in that part of the process. There's a lot of people ruined, man. There's a lot of people bled or bleeding or non-existent now because of that. Maybe on the long term we might see some benefits, but wow, man, that's going to take some time.
So talk to me then about, so for you, it's fixing problems on troubled sites, getting them approved, and then selling off to someone else that wants to
Not
take
always sell.
Yep.
Sell. If I can turn it into an income-producing asset,
Yep.
then I'm happy to hang on to it. I think I like that. I like that long-term hold thing with maybe some further upside. So I've got shopping centres that have got development upside and potential if the shopping centre for some strange reason doesn't work. I've got a mixed-use development site on
above it.
16,000 metres at some certain floor space plus affordable housing these days. Another 30%.
Talk to me a little bit around Orchids Castle Hill. Is that your biggest project you've put together?
Look, I've probably got by value a project that's probably worth a lot more money, but that's probably the best sort of tick and flick I've ever done.
Let's run through it because I reckon it's crazy. What I've heard of it,
okay.
But I want to hear it from the man himself. Take me back to the start.
88,000 square metres. I approached through a real estate friend of mine, Seventh-day Adventist Church, to sell a site that they had already zoned for apartments. But once I put pen to paper, it's about seven or 8 acres of something, that first property, or two of them, say 10 acres. And you could probably...
Where are we talking?
Oh, Norwest.
Norwest?
Yeah, so Castle Hill, Norwest.
Option agreement? Call option?
Yeah, call option, 300K.
300,000, that's it?
300,000 for 3 years.
Okay, and what was the price of the entire site?
We purchased that for sub 30 million.
Yep.
All right. But that wasn't just that property, so we ended up adding another 5 acres down the other end.
Connected though? Same site?
Yeah, so it was the 10 acres were owned by the church. And then behind us, so as we were doing the design, we came across a ecology issue of Cumberland Wood Plains community. Hence, then I thought I need to come up with an offset strategy or some sort of strategy, because biobanking wasn't a thing really at that point. Then I realised when walking the site, I went there one day. I didn't go to pray, even though it was a church. I walked through the car park. I went down to the bottom of the property and I seen a creek. And, creeks have something called a riparian zone. So generally, from the centre of the creek, you can go... Back then it was a little different as well, but 20 to 40 metres from the centre of the creek, either side, you leave as a riparian corridor. So the idea is that the creek can flourish within that 20 to 40 metres either side of that centre.
If it overflows as well, yep.
Yeah, all that stuff, flora, fauna, water, all that, right? All that comes into it. Then I thought, wow, why don't I try to buy the guy at the back? So I sent my mate, the agent, because I don't do the door knocking. It's not my thing.
Really?
I don't want to door knock.
Did you used to when you were starting out though?
No.
Send the agent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's better, right? It's better because they're agents, man. Long story short, we end up acquiring the back section under option as well. And then we submitted a planning proposal. We got a gateway approval of 4.75 to 1 times 88,000 square metres. So that was earmarked for about 3,500 apartments.
But I know I'm getting what you're saying, but I want to break this down for people at home. Planning proposal.
Yep.
What's the timeline of you've acquired both sites from starting that planning proposal to submission? What's indicative? Like what money's required? What sort of works to put the whole thing together?
You pay an option fee that cost me 300 odd grand at the time. There was additional, probably another 100 grand for the guy at the back as well over time. So that didn't happen straight away. Intrinsically, I need to do it, or in essence, I need to do it within about 3 years. I need to submit what's called a planning proposal, which is a rezoning application. And I happen to be one of the first privates to submit a PP, a planning proposal, right?
In that area?
In New South Wales.
Wow, okay.
Because I'd been preparing for the day that they released that process. We had no formal process before the planning proposal process as you know it today. Back in the day, you used to just put a rezoning application into council, just go pay a fee and lob it on the front desk. There was no process, right? At least this time, the department did a good job in trying to at least build a pathway. There was a process, there was a fee, there was an application form. It now became a formal process, right? So then you needed to submit that application, you pay a fee. There were different categories and levels of rezoning that you would apply for. I won't go into that detail. That's pretty complicated at times. But anyway, you pay that fee. You then need to go through an exhibition period and an assessment process by the staff. They either agree or disagree. Then it goes before council. The council will then support or not support the application to go to Gateway. So the Gateway is the formal interim acceptance of the application, which gives you the parameters for which you need to work within. So you'll get a floor space ratio. What that is, it's a number that you multiply by the site area in order to give you a gross floor area in total. So in our particular instance, our Gateway was 4.75 times 88,000 square metres, right? So when you do that, you do that multiplication and then you take out, the calculation as an architect, you'll take out 15 to 20% for efficiencies. You then would divide it by an average size of apartment. You'd probably end up with about 33 to 3,500 apartments on that site. So that was where it was going. But if you did the DA under the current planning controls, I could probably get 250 apartments.
Wow.
So the numbers are 250 apartments under the current scheme, as opposed to potentially up to 3,500 if I could get a rezoning. Right?
Yeah.
So that's an uplift.
I just want to, keep going. I just want to crunch some numbers in my head for this.
Right. So while you're on the calculator, I've gone there and sort of done that. Got the Gateway.
Yeah.
And then we've engaged. Then what they do is they give you, back in the day, they used to give you the Gateway approval, and on the back of it about 10 or 15 pages of something called the 117 directions. The 117 directions are basically all of the processes you need to follow, the various stakeholders you need to consult with and get concurrence from, right, over a period of time, and then also to the department would also give the determining authority, which in this case was council, a time frame. You need to have it all completed by X date. These days, they break it down even further. The latest Gateway we got is they break it down into 4 or 5 dates and milestones.
Yep.
So rather than just say, you've got 12 months to get it done, today's the 14th of October, you need to get it done by the 14th of October next year. These days, they go, you need to have this done by that date, this done by that date, this, which I think is nice because at least then the smaller time frames or targets are more palatable.
Yeah.
And it also gives some clearer direction so that everybody sort of says, okay, you've got to do this thing by then. But by having it open end to end for 12 months, nobody else knows what needs to be done in between at a agreed time frame. So I think breaking it down from the latest Gateway I just received not long ago on something, I think that's been a vast improvement. The problem then you have is, how do you sort of get through it? So anyway, long story short on that process.
Any hairs on that you had to go back and get approval for? What about all the trees?
Look, many reports, so ecology reports, flood reports, bushfire analysis, architectural responses, urban designers, social impact reports, community engagement. Like, the process is not for the faint-hearted. It's a difficult process. And the funny thing is, everybody looks at how you succeed and what you've done. Nobody really knows how much heartache you went through for 3 to 5 years, right? So, we got to a point where, we had a concurrence from council that they'll support, a certain density. So they cut us down from 3,500 apartments to 1,300. That's a big hit, but I'm still grateful for that result, right? That result is, fantastic anyway. The problem then we faced was trying to get it out of the department. So, there were certain things that used to happen, and I'm gonna use my ego here for a bit and say there's a particular clause in the LEP on that site that was specifically targeted because of another strategy I had in the Hills. So in the Hills, for many years before I did that project, the Hills Council has a DCP requirement for certain size apartments. Mm-hmm. So it's like 90 square metres for a one-bedder, 110 for a two-bedder, and 135 for a three-bedder.
Big apartments. Yeah.
Massive, right? And that was a state government-led initiative to control the demographic. Right? I won't get into that detail. Everybody needs to just take that the way they want to take that. I might get myself into trouble for too much information around that. Nevertheless, the LGA...
Were they the actual controls, that size?
The DCP, right? Yeah. But, the way I did things was I would go to the control that would override that control, and that's a state policy, like the residential flat code.
Okay.
Right? Would supersede a local council policy, 100% of the time. And I used it for years in other areas. So I used to then go and buy sites, which I did one on Seven Hills Road, for example. I bought it for, everybody thought 100 units, we put 160 units on that. So we went, instead of going 90, 110, 130, we went 60, 80, 100, roughly, let's call it, right? So we end up with 160 units, we DA approved that, we sell it. In this particular instance, even the 1,300 apartments could have ended up being about 2,500 to 3,000 if I was able to use the residential flat code densities.
Yep.
But they specifically put in the LEP a clause that said, in the event that the developer would try to use state government controls, it would revert back to the old density of 200 units or whatever it was, right? Okay, so that was the only way that they were going to approve that, because I think that's my fault, right? Absolutely. They knew my strategies. I was probably infamous for it within that council. And look, I wasn't doing anything wrong. It was legal. Like, I didn't do anything illegal about it. I was just clever enough to work out the loophole, and I used it for many years. I did extremely well doing that, and I'm grateful for that. For being able to see things that most people don't. And I did that for a long time. So that's the process we had to follow to get there. And look, that's the planning issues, and then you got funding and financing issues. So we ended up using a hedge fund originally based out in New York called Fortress. So Fortress is a hedge fund that's got a Sydney base as well, and these guys with a business partner of mine lent us the money to buy the site.
Okay, so the option period came up.
Yeah,
they said you need to buy it.
I'll tell you another piece to that. So the option period's about to come up. I've already financed into it. We've gone 12 months.
So you've bought the site.
So now I've bought the site.
Yep.
Okay, we're hanging on to it, and we're just solutioning every day. Every month we go to Fortress. We meet with because in essence they're our partners at the rate that they charge. They're in essence a equity partner, right? But it's a loan. We'd go back and forth reporting to them on a regular basis. So we're getting almost to 12 months. I've never had any intention to sell the site. My intention was to find an equity partner and develop this out for 10 years.
Wow.
Right? I didn't want to do any more than that. I never wanted to go full delivery, but because I had bought it as well as I did, it made sense to do this on a long-term basis and deliver it out. We get a door knock from a few people wanting to buy the site. Few different companies. Look, we entertain them. I took it with a grain of salt. I was never a seller. Many an email, many a response. Not interested, don't really want it. Get them to buy a piece of it. Get them to buy that piece of it. anything I could do to avoid selling it, I tried to do. We then get to a crossroad where loan's about to mature for year one. We go back and say, hey guys, we're about to mature, what do you want to do? They said, we'll lend you money again on the same terms for another 12 months. It's expensive, right?
What percentage you talking?
Look, by the time you blend it up and fees and charges and that line fee and this fee and whatever the case may be, it was probably around about 20 to 22%, right? Of a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right?
But all you had in the deal was
we'd probably spent about $1.5 million of our cash.
Yeah.
Between option fees and a lot of consultancy. Yeah. Lots of it, right?
Yeah, but you're not, do you put anything down for the original, that purchase then? Or that was them coming into the fund?
Because they gave us all of the money because they knew that the potential value of this is 10x, right?
Yeah.
8x, let's call it, right? So anyway, they give us just about everything. We had to put a little bit in. I don't remember the exact numbers, but we're in it for something. And they like to see that. No one will give you 100%, even if it's worth 20 times what you're paying for it. They want to see a bit of
skin in the game.
Yeah, right. Which to me never makes any sense. Anyway, so we get to a crossroad where it's just about to go. Several parties. So somebody's come and given us a deposit and gone on an exclusive DD period of 6 weeks. Call it $1.5 million. Exclusive DD that rolls into an unconditional contract. Chinese company. I didn't want to sell to them. I had a big blow up with my partner about it. I said, mate, they're not going to finish. They're not going to settle. He goes, what do you care? They're going to give us $1.5 million. I said, okay. They give us a deposit. We roll into contracts. Other internal issues arise between partnerships and legals and lawyers and tax lawyers. And, it's a minefield of stuff there. And then comes settlement.
But have you agreed a price yet?
Yeah, we've agreed a price, right?
Okay.
Yeah, we've agreed a price.
Yep.
Probably 50 to 70 million less than what I think it's worth.
Wow.
But it's a lot of money.
What are we talking? Can you give us a guide?
In the 150s.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, not much money in my account, just saying no to this. Yeah? So you can't even imagine where my mind is at. But I'm just sitting there, look, I know what I've got, right? I know how good it is. And it's cheaper to pay interest to my hedge fund than it is to lose 50 to 70 million bucks. Right? There's probably 8 years or 9 years of interest to pay to lose that, if that makes sense. Plus whatever capital gain you're going to get hanging on to it for that long.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? Like it was a science, right? And for me, it didn't make sense to just let it go. Long and short of it now is we turn up to settle on the day, they're nowhere to be seen. They don't respond to us. No emails. Lawyers not responding. Nothing. Just disappeared. Left the money and gone.
Wow.
Chinese group. Don't know where they are, right? The clever bit that we did, I'm going to take some credit for that.
Yeah, go on.
Is I went to the hedge fund and prepared the funding just in case they didn't settle. Because it happened to me before on a smaller scale. And I got caught out once. So 10 years before that, I had a smaller site, had a buyer, paid me a deposit, couldn't settle. But it was a simultaneous settlement, so I didn't want to settle the property myself and then pay stamp duty and then sell to them. And we were wasting money, so it was efficient to do. I was assigning back then. You could assign the call option with no stamp duty implications. Right? These days, I think you got to pay stamp duty on it now.
It's on the option fee. It's not on the property fee, right?
Oh, you need to check that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I can't give you.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Anyway,
it's between you and me, anyway, Joe. It's no one else.
Not really, man. Not on this show, bro. I hear your reach is pretty big. Anyway, so we get to this crossroad where it's supposed to be a settlement. They don't turn up to settle, and fortunately, and I thank God every day for that, which is one of my better moves. Is I've got Fortress waiting to settle anyway. We then decide we're not settling with them. We rescind their contract. All rights reserved to sue you for anything of the balance and the difference between there. So if you were selling it for $100 million and then they don't settle, and then one day you sold it for $80 million, technically you can sue them for the balance, right? So all rights reserved. We rescind the contract. We settle. We're 12 months down the track now. We need to extend the loan another 12 months. I've got another buyer on the line, being Sekisui House. And, we're at this crossroad, and I haven't disclosed to the lender that the buyer is there and how much it's for. Mm-hmm. But I tried everything in my power to get them to become my joint venture partner and buy into it. So I'm going to use some round numbers. You've paid $30 million for it. I'm trying to book in a joint venture so that they come in at $120 million. Mm-hmm. I know it's worth double that, in my opinion.
Wow.
But I'm saying come in at 120. We develop it out for 10 years. It had a $3.2 billion GR. Gross realisation, right? So all of the units, when built back then with those values, had about $3.2 billion in gross realisation.
It's going to crunch the numbers, so keep going.
Anyway, they turn around and say, "No, we'll come in at 60." I got Sekisui House in the back paying more than 200, and that's public knowledge. I can disclose that.
Yep.
So I'm sitting there going, I got 200 here. I'd rather do a joint venture at 120, right? And then build this out over 10 years because it's a lot more effective from all perspectives to do that over 10 years, right? And I don't need to go and find another deal, and there's all that, right? Anyway, at the 9th hour, they've said, we're not going to go in at 120. Our final position is 60, but we'll extend your loan for 12 months. I've now got a few weeks to either extend the loan or exchange somehow with Sekisui.
Yeah.
And try and get as much of a big deposit as I can.
Just in case they pull out.
Who pulls out?
Sekisui?
No, they're not going to pull out. If Sekisui committed, I didn't have a problem with them committing. But what I ended up doing was, I ended up convincing them to give us enough money to cover the debt as a deposit.
Yeah.
To Fortress. Plus another 10 million.
Yeah.
As a loan, first mortgage on the property, yet also works as a deposit for the property, subject to rezoning, and then they pay us the balance of the 200 plus million at settlement.
Wow.
If I tell you that, like it was literally about 5 days before I had to finalise. I think I might have even paid the line fee to Fortress. From memory, I don't hold me to that, but I may have paid them the fee to be able to say, "Here's our commitment fee to the loan, give it to us," and then literally line ball, and then out of nowhere, Sekisui agrees. We exchange contracts. We get the money. We pay Fortress back. In essence, we're sort of debt free, right?
Yeah.
Unless they decide not to go ahead with the deal, and I don't get the rezoning.
Yeah.
Understand where this is at?
Yeah.
And that was the Great Escape.
That is unbelievable.
By the way,
so you said for it, pay back all the debt we owe you, cut you off, see you later, thanks so much. Here's all your interest. It's been good.
Everything,
interest,
everything.
The original 100%
probably up to 10 million in the bank as well, right? And we were in a good place.
Wow.
Right, and then now the hurdle is, how do you get it out of parliamentary council at the department? You need to get that final gazettal.
Yep.
Look, and then that was the job for let's call it the next sort of 9 to 12 months. Right?
Yep.
But let me tell you another little curly fact in there, that the 1.5 million that Chinese group left in there, I believe, and I've been told off the record, was a competing developer that put the money forward to make us fall over, and had gone to the vendors and told them, we'll pay an extra 30 million for the property because they're not going to settle.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Risk 1.5, give him a false sense of security. He doesn't organise any other alternative funding because he's relying on settlement. He doesn't settle. He's in default. We'll exchange contracts with you, and we'll buy it for 30 million more than he's paid.
Wow. Sneaky, huh?
Man, sinister. That's big business at a level that, you want to talk about lessons? Man, I learnt so much from that transaction that, I'll take it with me to the grave, and I could probably overcome most issues in my life, man. And don't forget, I don't have that much money in the bank.
Yeah, you've put it all in the planning.
We're there, and I've got a partner of mine who's a great person, and we've worked together well since. We're still doing stuff. So
wow.
So that's it, man. That's the story.
But rezoning, all that kind of stuff, and settlement? How does that play out?
Yeah, it plays out well, man. Like I said to you, the sticking point was this thing about that clause that needed to go in there to avoid me using state government densities or unit sizes, because I would have ended up with 3,000 units anyway.
Yep.
And look, I conceded to that in the end and said, put the clause in there. The department didn't want to put it, but I said, well, I just need it done, get it done, you know. So we did that.
Did that settled so we bought the project?
Yeah, man. I went to the settlement house, and me and my partner got a number of checks from, because Sekisui is owned by a number of banks. They're the largest home builder in the world. I think $1.8 trillion market cap or some silly number.
Yep.
Right? And they own several banks, or they're owned by several banks.
Yeah.
So, you know, they gave us, you know, their checks from their banks, you know, and we went and picked them up that day. And, you know, I've got photos and stuff that are in archive about all that, you know.
What do you do? What do you do the next day?
Oh, mate, I was actually at a charity event that night. We went to the charity event.
Feeling generous or what?
Oh, look, absolutely. But it was a bit of a surreal feeling, you know. Like, you don't know what to feel. You kind of always knew it was coming. You never knew what it was going to feel like that day. But, you know, a lot of people told me that, you know, there was a strange sense of calmness about me in that situation. They would never have been like that in that scenario. And look, and I think that sense of calmness, or that you know, finding that balanced approach to things, not be too emotional. So it's a really good balance between really excited and not excited at all. But just trying to stay as calm as you can through anything, whether it's good or it's bad, right? I think that was a valuable lesson for me. And, you know, being able to control euphoria is an ability to control ego, right? Because really, why do you need to be so happy about it if it's not ego-driven, right? No one's saying not to celebrate, but I don't need to go and boast and tell everybody about it, you know. And then the other thing with that success bit comes, you know, the ability to try to stay yourself, stay true to you and who you are and how you are. And I think that's probably, you know, the most important part of my success in this life. And I don't measure it with money, man. It's good to have it, and I'd rather have money than not have money, don't get me wrong. And anyone that tells you that, you know, money's not everything, I'm going to say in this day and age, and I say it with all humility, I'd rather be upset with money than upset and broke.
Plenty of lessons out of there, which has been great. That's, I suppose, you know, the high of your developing journey so far, or one of the highs. One of the lows, GFC. I've heard you sort of talk about it a lot. Yeah,
so I got hit. I got hit in the GFC. I was in the middle of construction of 41 units in St. Peter's, and 8 luxury apartments on Victoria Street in Drummoyne. Beautiful water view.
Victoria Road?
Victoria Street.
Okay, Victoria Street.
So parallel, the older Victoria Road is Victoria Street.
Oh, okay, yep.
Victoria Place. So I was under construction with those, you know, run out of money, you know, had a broker send over a family office to lend me some mezz money to finish. And I'll never forget it. An old bloke who I'm good friends with these days, I hope he's well, Don McKenzie, rocked up the site, and I was literally in the trenches out the front, digging the sewer and connecting the sewer with the plumber.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, I was running this project. Because of the way I was sort of brought up, I was pretty hands-on, you know. Wasn't the bloke that used to own a site and not do any work. I used to enjoy the physical labour and, you know, sort of get into it, and I'm learning stuff and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I'm in the trenches, literally in the trenches, and this older bloke turns up, and he says, "Oh, I'm after Joe Abboud." And I said, "Yeah, just give me a minute." Anyway, so I finished digging this hole with the plumber, get out, wipe my hands on my jeans. On my jeans at the time. I looked at Don, I said, "Hey, how you going? I'm Joe Abboud." He goes, "You're Joe Abboud?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "This is your site?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, okay." He said, Don McKenzie, the guys from Balmain MB sent me. I said, "Yeah." He said, "How can I help you?" He goes, apparently you want to borrow some money to finish the project. You're running out of money." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay, look, I think I've seen enough. I don't need to go onto the site." I said, "Sure." He said, we'll come back to you. We'll book a meeting. We'll go to the boys' offices and we'll catch up, right?
Yeah, okay.
Right. So
He thought it was that bad, huh?
No, he thought it was that good.
Oh, okay.
He said the fact that I was in the trenches digging holes as the owner or the developer, that was enough for him. He's now backing the guy. He's not backing the deal. The deal's the deal. But he's seen enough that I was actually physically breaking my back in the trenches, that he wants to back that guy that doesn't just sit around and think he's God and ego, ego bigger than him, watching everybody do all the work. He was actually in the trenches, helping.
Yeah.
And he said that to me. He said, look, you know what? He said, I didn't go in there to see all that. The numbers and the quantity surveyors and all the reports I'm going to get are going to tell me all that. He said, the fact that I seen you in the trenches is the reason why I lent you the money.
Yeah.
Right? So, that was a tough time. That was GFC. I finished that. I couldn't sell those units for a while. That just ended up, in big losses for me.
The eight units?
Yeah, the 8 units. St. Peter's had its dramas between, builders going broke and changing builders and then a mez company that lent us some money there was a bit predatory in their approach, and then we had to change lenders. And so, that's why I don't really build anymore.
Yep.
Dealing with unions and, I almost turned into a gangster to be able to build a building, right?
Yeah, okay. Big builders, and yep.
Yeah, and you're dealing, St. Peter's was 41 units, 1.5 metres from the Illawarra line on the rail line. And so every time you had to erect or dismantle scaffold, I had to wait for a 48-hour shutdown once every 3 months. So my whole construction schedule was built around a dismantling and erecting scaffold window for 48 hours once every 3 months, right? And then you had to brace those things down, board it up with timber for stray current issues. So, man, my extensive experience in this whole industry comes from a lot of problems, and sort of getting through those and, really building some resilience is the word I'm looking for. Resilience is key to any success, man. Because they're not always going to be good days.
Yeah.
Not always going to be good
You've
days.
come through that.
Yeah, man, I've been through the worst, even on the construction site and physically going on there and dealing with, crappy builders and dealing with unions and dealing with, all that stuff, right? It turned me off for life. I just don't have an eye for it anymore. It's not worth the time and energy. I'd rather keep doing what I'm doing, and after I submit my applications, I go on another holiday or do something,
You submit it.
I submit the application,
Yeah.
and I take off on a holiday.
For 42 days.
For whatever. I don't even need to be here for that.
Yeah,
42 days is nothing. Got enough good people around me to manage those processes.
How do we fix the housing crisis?
You need supply. Supply. That's all you can do to fix it. Forget inflation, forget the Reserve Bank, forget all that kind of stuff. If you don't provide supply, prices can only go north, because it's about supply and demand. That's all it's about, right? And that's where the guys that run the economics in this country don't seem to understand that inflation and put up interest rates ain't going to bring prices down. Doesn't do that.
Yeah.
What they've done is the reverse effect. If you have a look at the price of housing today, it's gone up.
Even with interest rate rises, yeah.
Correct.
People thinking it goes the other way.
Because the triggers are supply and demand. It's not interest rates, right? They got it wrong. Mate, I'm uneducated. I don't know much. I just know that if there's not enough supply, prices have to go up.
Yeah. There's more
If the
people
demand's there, right? They're bringing, people in. There's all of the people coming from overseas.
Yeah. Record immigration rates.
Immigration rates are going to drive them. If nothing else does, immigration rates will drive them. Supply. That's all I can tell the industry, right? I can tell government. Yeah.
Food for thought, definitely. I think, me personally, I think if we can supply is the issue. I'm fighting everyone on Instagram at the moment with a lot of my short form content that landlords are these greedy people, and if every landlord just sold their house, we'd fix the housing supply. I mean, that doesn't address anything about people that need rental accommodation and your upfront costs to actually buy and get into a house. But I think if we have more supply, we have more opportunity for everyone else.
Look, the development industry can fix it. Right? Definitely, the development industry can fix the pipeline and can build.
They have the capacity to, however, they need some help.
Totally, but listen, man, what's happened at the moment between the crackdown on construction and the new systems and processes, put in place for these builders and what they need to follow, and the extra expense, 10, 15, 20% more in construction costs because they've got more people pushing more pens, uploading more paperwork on a daily basis. Someone's got to pay for that, and look, that's the price we're going to pay for this strategy. And like I said, man, I think it's 6 to 12 years to fix. It's not 6 to 12 months.
Huge. All right. Well, look, Joe, the way we usually finish up these podcasts is I ask two final questions. One is, what is your golden nugget? What's your little bit of advice for anyone listening to take away from today's chat that they can implement in? It could be development, everyday life, anything.
Look, I think the couple of words I'm going to use now can relate to everything, and whether it's your personal life, your business life, whatever. Agility is key. So you need to stay agile and move with the times. And the second word I'm going to use is stay relevant. So you need to stay as agile as you can to stay relevant in any industry. What do I mean by that? If at the rate of technology today, if you don't move with the times, you'll get to a place where you become irrelevant to society, right? So agility to stay relevant.
I like that.
That's my golden nugget, and I don't think you've heard that on here.
No,
before.
well, I usually follow it up with a quote you live your life by. That's kind of one, but is there anything else?
Yeah.
Look, you good. I haven't heard it.
You can have everything, you just can't have it at once.
I like it.
So you can have everything you want in life, you just can't have it all at once, man. So everybody just needs to, sit stationary and still and let the world offer itself freely to you.
Good things take time.
That's it.
Joe Abboud, appreciate you coming on the Everything Property Podcast.
Thanks, buddy.
All
Appreciate
good,
your
no
time. Thanks for
problems.
having me.